Imagine a university seminar room, right? Let's say filled with some of the absolute top experts in global technology and security.
Okay, yeah, so the real heavy hitters.
Exactly. The policymakers, the scientists.
Hmm.
And this professor steps up to the podium and starts discussing desktop DNA synthesizers.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And he explains, quite calmly, that the cost of these machines is just plummeting. I mean, they fit on a standard workbench now.
Right.
And because they allow basically anyone to print bespoke strands of biological material from a digital file, he says that a single rogue individual could, in theory, mail order the missing parts to synthesize a novel, highly transmissible pathogen.
That is just, I mean, that's terrifying.
It is.
Yeah.
He looks at this room of experts and straight up tells them that right now a single person has the capacity to spark a pandemic that could kill 1 billion people.
A completely staggering apocalyptic reality to lay on a group of people. Like, how do you even process that?
Exactly. And how do you think the experts react? Do they panic? Do they, immediately draft emergency protocol?
I'm going to guess no.
No, not at all. They squirm in their seats. They clear their throats.
Oh, man.
They mutter a few vague reassurances about control mechanisms. And then the seminar ends, and they all just go out for pizza and chat about their weekends.
Unbelievable. Just right back to normal life.
Right back to the pizza. And that is why we are here today. Welcome to a custom-tailored deep dive into some truly mind-bending source material we've gathered for you.
Yes, we are looking at The Coming Wave, which is this deeply unsettling but really illuminating text by Mustafa Suleyman.
Right, the co-founder of DeepMind and Inflection AI.
Exactly, along with Michael Bhaskar. And our mission for you today is not to just, rattle off a list of new technological breakthroughs.
Yeah, we're not doing that.
Right. We aren't here to read a spec sheet about what the latest microchip or language model can achieve. That's not the goal.
No, we are going deeper. We are going to unpack the deep psychological motivations that drive humanity to relentlessly build these tools, even when they literally threaten our existence.
Yeah.
We're going to explore the reality-bending, metaphysical shifts occurring right now as we learn to engineer both intelligence and biological life.
It's massive.
And we have to ask what this all means for human consciousness, your identity, and really the future of our reality.
And that is the core philosophical premise we must establish immediately for you. Technology is not something separate from humanity.
Right.
It isn't this external force acting upon us from the outside. It is a fundamental, integrated property of our evolution as a species.
Like it's built into us.
Exactly. To understand where we are going with artificial intelligence and synthetic biology, you have to understand that you cannot separate the human animal from the tools it creates.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can even look at the terrifying future of AI and biotech, we have to understand the historical and psychological momentum driving us there.
Yes, the momentum is key.
Right. Because if the experts in that seminar room knew the risks, why do we relentlessly build? The sources talk about this concept of Homo technologicus, the technological animal.
The idea of Homo technologicus asserts that humanity and technology evolve in strict symbiosis.
Meaning we rely on each other.
Right. We didn't just invent tools. Tools invented us. If we connect this to the bigger picture, you can look back hundreds of thousands of years to the control of fire by our ancestor Homo erectus.
Okay.
Fire wasn't just a neat environmental trick to, stay warm or ward off predators. The campfire fundamentally altered our biological anatomy.
Because of the caloric math, right?
Yeah.
The text explains that brain tissue is incredibly biologically expensive to maintain.
Precisely. It burns a ton of energy. Other primates, they have to spend massive portions of their day chewing and digesting raw, tough vegetation and raw meat.
Like gorillas.
Right. Their digestive tracts are enormous, and their jaw muscles are so massive they literally anchor to the top of their skulls.
Wow.
And that physical anchor literally constrains the size of the brain cavity.
So they literally can't grow bigger brains because their jaw muscles are in the way.
Exactly. But when our ancestors started cooking food over a fire, they were essentially pre-digesting it outside the body. The caloric energy became suddenly cheap and easy to absorb.
So our bodies adapted.
Yes.
The human digestive tract shrank because we didn't need huge fermentation chambers to break down raw leaves. Our jaw muscles weakened, which removed that physical constraint on our skulls.
It's incredible.
The campfire didn't just give us light. The mechanism of cooking literally provided the caloric surplus and anatomical freedom for our brains to physically enlarge.
Yes.
Our capacity for complex imagination, language and reason, is down to the cellular level, a product of our interaction with that tool.
And once that biological capacity is unlocked, the waves of technology begin to compound, basically feeding on themselves. The text traces this compounding effect beautifully through history.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Take the internal combustion engine. The sources walk through the late 19th century.
Right, the early days of car.
Yeah, you have all these tinkerers trying to figure out self-propelled vehicles.
Mm.
But the early attempts rely on steam.
Which is not great for a personal car.
No. Steam is fundamentally limited for personal transport. You need massive, heavy iron boilers to contain the pressure, water to boil, and coal or wood to burn.
It's just too cumbersome.
It's heavy, it's dangerous, and it plods along at a walking pace.
It's physically constrained by its own thermodynamic mechanics.
Right, but then you get the shift to the four-stroke internal combustion engine by Nicholas August Otto, and eventually Carl Benz patents the motor wagon in 1886.
The game changer.
Exactly. He realizes that combusting a highly volatile liquid fuel directly inside the cylinder provides this immense power-to-weight ratio. But here's the fascinating part. The public doesn't get it.
They don't care.
Right. They see it as a terrifying, loud, expensive novelty. I mean, why would you want an exploding metal box when you have a perfectly good horse?
The utility isn't obvious until the tool is pushed to its limits.
And that push doesn't come from Carl Benz.
No, it doesn't.
It comes from his wife and business partner, Bertha Benz. This is such a great story. Without his knowledge, she takes the motor wagon and her two teenage sons and drives it 65 miles to her mother's house in Pforzheim.
Which is wild because there are no gas stations in 1888.
None. So she has to rely on the existing infrastructure. She stops at local pharmacies in towns like Wieslog to buy Ligroin.
Which is, like a petroleum-based solvent?
Yeah, it was used for cleaning, and she pours it into the carburetor to refuel. She unclogs fuel lines with her hat pin.
Wow.
She invents brake pads by having a cobbler nail leather to the wooden brake blocks when they start wearing down.
That journey wasn't just a joyride. It was a profound proof of concept. She demonstrated mechanical reliability and real-world utility.
And it completely sparks the public imagination. From that single road trip, the momentum becomes an unstoppable cascade.
Yeah, it just snowballs.
You move to Henry Ford, who doesn't just improve the car, he improves the process of building the car with the moving assembly line.
Right.
He standardizes the mechanical parts. The price drops from $2,000 to $850. And suddenly, the physical world is fundamentally rewritten.
The whole landscape changes.
We pave the planet with asphalt. We invent suburbs because you no longer need to live within walking distance of the factory. We create global supply chains for oil, all cascading from the mechanism of that one engine.
And that cascade reveals the underlying nature of invention. The text argues that invention is a sprawling, emergent process.
Right.
There is no central committee planning the next waves. It is driven by highly competitive entrepreneurs, academics, and corporations, all surging forward simultaneously.
Yeah.
And the crucial mechanism to understand is that this ecosystem of invention defaults to expansion. As a technology gets cheaper and easier to use, proliferation is the default state.
But I want to push back on this a little bit because it sounds like you're describing an organic, almost unthinking process.
Right.
It's like if we are the ones engineering these tools, are we actually in control?
That's the big question.
The sources detail these overwhelming incentives to build geopolitical fear, the massive financial rewards of the stock market, the open culture of academic research.
Right.
If you look at it structurally, are we just like a caterpillar compelled by its hard-coded biology to build a cocoon? Is the caterpillar aware of the metamorphosis it's about to cause, or is it just following a biological imperative?
That's a great analogy.
Are we just blindly executing an evolutionary program to build the next wave?
The caterpillar analogy works perfectly, but it misses one terrifying detail.
What's that?
The caterpillar's transformation has been refined by millions of years of natural selection. It is hard-coded by nature to succeed. Our transformation has no safety net.
Right.
We are building the cocoon without knowing if we will survive the metamorphosis.
Unsettling.
It is. The sources argue that the motivations are deeply human, entirely uncoordinated, and utterly relentless. Beyond the profit motive or military supremacy, the most visceral driver of all is human ego.
The intellectual thrill of it.
Yes, the desire to push the boundary, to be the one who solves the mathematical puzzle, to publish the groundbreaking paper first. It's an intoxicating psychological loop.
There's a quote in the text from J. Robert Oppenheimer, the director of the Los Alamos Laboratory during the Manhattan Project, that perfectly captures this terrifying psychological loop.
What did he say?
He said, when you see something that is technically sweet, you go ahead and do it, and you argue about what to do about it only after you have had your technical success.
Technically sweet. It is such a chilling, precise phrase.
It really is.
It encapsulates the mindset of the engineer and the scientist. The immediate, localized thrill of solving a complex mechanism overrides any abstract, long-term, ethical, or existential consideration.
Right. You just want to see if you can do it.
Exactly. John von Neumann, another brilliant mind who worked on the Manhattan Project and early computing, echoed this exact sentiment. He essentially argued that if something is technologically feasible, human beings will inevitably do it, regardless of the consequences. The momentum of curiosity is a force of nature.
But if the engineers at Los Alamos knew they were building a mechanism capable of world-ending destruction, how do they sleep at night?
Denial is powerful.
I mean, if our drive to create is this unstoppable biological and psychological imperative, how do today's AI researchers justify their work when they see the existential risks?
Well,
This brings us back to that room full of experts eating pizza. The sources identify a profound psychological blind spot driving this behavior, which the authors call pessimism aversion.
pessimism aversion isn't just stubbornness. It is an ingrained, almost physiological gut refusal to accept the possibility of seriously destabilizing outcomes.
Like we literally can't process it.
Right. Evolutionarily, if you are paralyzed by the fear of a distant abstract threat, say a theoretical famine 3 years from now, your amygdala might trap you in a state of anxiety. An anxiety that prevents you from gathering food or reproducing today. The human brain acts as a filter, prioritizing immediate, localized threats over abstract, systemic ones.
So our brains are literally not wired to grapple with transformation at an existential scale.
Exactly. It's a specialized variant of optimism bias, and the text notes it is particularly prevalent among elites, technologists, and policymakers.
Because they're comfortable.
Yes, they currently sit in secure, privileged positions. They can cope with narratives of minor incremental change, but their cognitive filters completely block out any narrative that threatens the stability of their entire worldview.
The author shares a story from his own experience that illustrates this perfectly. He is giving a presentation to a room full of the most influential founders, investors, and CEOs in Silicon Valley.
The people actually building this stuff.
Exactly, the people building the systems. He's walking them through the long-term economic and social mechanics of AI, the collapse of epistemic trust due to misinformation, massive job displacement through automation, the erosion of privacy.
That stuff.
Very heavy. And for his concluding slide, he literally puts up a picture of the townspeople from The Simpsons charging forward with pitchforks and torches.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he looks at this room of billionaires and tells them the pitchforks are coming.
He is presenting them with the direct causal outcome of their own products.
Yeah.
And how do they react?
Complete rationalization. Total dismissal.
Really?
Yeah. They don't panic. They immediately start arguing the micromechanics.
Ah, of course.
They say economic indicators from the past show that new tech always creates new jobs. They argue that humans are inherently smart and market solutions will naturally arise to combat misinformation.
They're just dodging the real issue.
They completely refuse to engage with the systemic risk. They just nod, check their watches, and move on to the next presentation. Total denial.
It is the ultimate head-in-the-sand ideology. To truly believe the severity of the risks would mean taking responsibility for them, which risks paralysis.
Right.
So they deploy cognitive dissonance. They acknowledge the risks on a surface, intellectual level, but they refuse to internalize them.
Which perfectly explains the DNA synthesizer seminar. When faced with the mechanical reality that a single individual could print a billion-death pathogen from a digital file, the experts don't act.
No.
They squirm, they deploy pessimism aversion to filter out the existential dread, and they prioritize the immediate comfort of a pepperoni pizza.
In the modern context, this evolutionary defense mechanism has become our greatest vulnerability. We are filtering out the fire alarm because the sound is too unpleasant to process.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Because if our psychological drive to build is unstoppable, and our psychological defense mechanism prevents us from seeing the danger, we have to look very closely at exactly what we are building.
Yes, the actual tech.
The author argues that the technologies of this coming wave aren't just new tools like the internal combustion engine. They represent metaphysical shift.
A profound one.
We have crossed a boundary where technology is no longer manipulating raw materials. We are engineering the foundational building blocks of reality itself.
This is the critical phase transition of the coming wave. It is defined by two primary pillars: artificial intelligence and synthetic biology.
Right.
For all of recorded history, human technology was about manipulating inanimate matter. We chipped stone, we forged iron, we combusted oil, we split the atom.
Dead stuff.
Exactly, dead matter. But this wave is entirely different. For the first time, our tools are directly addressing, isolating, and manipulating two universal foundations of the world as we know it:
Which are?
intelligence and biological life.
It's like we are no longer just using the computer. We are rewriting the operating system of the physical world.
That's a great way to put it.
Let's look at the biology side. The book points out a profound philosophical realization that happened over the last 2 decades.
Yeah.
Basically, DNA is not magic.
Right.
It is essentially an encoding and storage system. It is pure information.
Yes. It is a sequence of base pairs: adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. A, T, C, G.
Right. And once you understand it mechanically as information, you realize it operates just like software code. It can be sequenced and read. And with tools like CRISPR, it can be edited. We should explain how that works because it's not just a vague concept.
Please do.
CRISPR utilizes a guide RNA that acts like a Ctrl-F search function in a word processor.
Right. Finding the specific text.
Yeah, hunting down a specific sequence of DNA. Then, an enzyme called Cas9 acts like a pair of molecular scissors, cutting the DNA at that exact spot so we can paste in new code.
So if DNA is a programming language, we've moved from just passively reading the code to hitting compile and printing a living organism.
Exactly. We can write code in silicon to create AI, and we can write code in carbon to create synthetic biology.
And the text emphasizes that these two pillars do not exist in isolation.
No, they're merging.
Right. We're experiencing what the authors call a Cambrian explosion of cross-pollinating technologies.
The compounding effect we discussed with the car is now happening across multiple disciplines simultaneously.
Yes. You have quantum computing, robotics, nanotechnology, and genetic engineering all feeding into one another. It is a cross-catalyzing cycle.
How so? Like, give me an example of how they feed into each other.
Okay, for example, you use advanced AI to map the incredibly complex folding structures of proteins.
Which is super hard, right?
It used to take humans years of laboratory work to do for just one protein. The AI does it in seconds.
Wow.
And that allows synthetic biologists to design new bespoke enzymes. Those enzymes can be used to manufacture more efficient materials for quantum computers.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Right. Those quantum computers then provide the massive processing power to train even more massive AI models. Atoms, bits, and genes are completely conjoining.
And the geopolitical reality of this is functioning like a massive accelerant.
Oh, yeah.
The sources detail how this metaphysical shift is driving a fierce, state-directed competition, particularly between the United States and China, over technological dominance.
It's a huge factor.
The text points to a specific historical mechanism. Do you remember when Google's AI, AlphaGo, beat the human world champion Lee Sedol at the ancient game of Go?
Yes, that was a huge deal.
In the West, it was largely celebrated as, a very cool tech milestone.
But the sources note that in China, it was viewed as a Sputnik moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And again, just to be clear for the listener, we aren't taking political sides here.
No, of course not.
We are just impartially reporting the factual dynamics laid out in the text. The book explains that AlphaGo's victory triggered a massive, state-directed surge of capital and policy in China aimed at dominating artificial intelligence.
Right. The geopolitical incentives to control the foundational technologies of intelligence and life are functioning like an unstoppable arms race.
Neither side feels they can stop.
Neither side feels they can afford to pause, because pausing means yielding the future of reality to a geopolitical rival.
Which brings us to the profound philosophical implication of all this.
Yeah.
If we are engineering synthetic life from digital files, and if we are creating artificial capable intelligence that can strategize, write poetry, and solve complex chemistry problems.
What does that mean for human identity?
Right. The boundary line between human and machine, between the natural world and the artificial world, is entirely collapsing.
If a biological organism is printed from a machine, is it nature or technology?
Precisely.
And if a machine can reason and communicate with nuance, what makes human consciousness unique? We are forcing a redefinition of what it means to be alive.
That thought gives me chills.
Don't
Because
dig.
if we are engineering reality itself, We have to admit that these new technologies are taking on traits that are completely alien to any previous human invention.
Yes, they are.
You can't regulate an AI the way you regulate an airplane or a pharmaceutical drug. The book outlines 4 features of the coming wave that make it incredibly unique and exceptionally difficult to control.
Asymmetry, hyperevolution, omni-use, and autonomy.
Let's examine the mechanics of those 4 features because they represent the structural breakdown of our traditional safety nets.
Okay, the first is asymmetry. Historically, power was symmetrical. You needed mass to fight mass. If you wanted to destroy a city, you needed a massive industrial base to build bombers, mine uranium, train thousands of soldiers, and project force. It required the resources of a sovereign nation-state.
But the wave flips that math completely.
Complete.
Cost of destruction is plummeting. Today, a single rogue actor with a laptop and an internet connection can deploy an automated cyber weapon that cripples a national power grid.
It's terrifying.
A tiny biohacker collective in a garage can synthesize a virus. The destructive capacity that was previously the sole domain of superpowers is being symmetrically transferred to individuals.
The second feature is hyperevolution. We discussed compounding earlier, but this is compounding at an exponential, non-human scale.
Like beyond Moore's law.
Exactly. We aren't just talking about the doubling of transistors on a microchip. We are talking about algorithms that iteratively improve themselves.
Oh, right.
The feedback loops are tightening so fast that the regulatory bodies, which, take years to draft legislation, are functionally obsolete before the ink is dry.
The third feature, omni-use, is where it gets really dark. These are general-purpose technologies.
Yes.
The text makes it clear you can't just ban the bad parts of the tech because the underlying mechanism is exactly the same as the good parts. Let me give you a specific example that perfectly illustrates this.
Please.
The sources mention the world of AI drug discovery. You have researchers using AI models to sort through massive latent spaces of molecular structures to find new, life-saving, non-toxic pharmaceutical drugs.
Which is an incredible benefit to humanity.
It is. But a few years ago, researchers decided to run a terrifying experiment. They took their highly advanced medical AI and they just inverted the parameters.
Oh, no.
Instead of telling the AI to search for molecules with low toxicity, they tweaked the reward function and told it to find molecules with high toxicity.
They turned the healer into an assassin.
Exactly. And the AI didn't need new hardware or new training data. Within 6 hours, the model generated 40,000 highly lethal molecular structures. 6 hours, including the exact chemical makeup of VX nerve gas, plus thousands of other chemical warfare agents that had never been seen before.
That is just staggering.
6 hours, a flip of a parameter.
Mm-hmm.
That is omni-use. The same algorithm that cures cancer can design a chemical apocalypse.
What's fascinating here is how that leads directly into the fourth and most paradigm-shifting feature, autonomy.
Autonomy.
For the entirety of human history, technology was deterministic. We had to do the doing.
Right.
If you write a traditional computer program, it is a series of if-then statements. A human programmer has to painstakingly map out every logical step. The machine just executes it.
But autonomous AI breaks that deterministic chain.
Completely. We are moving to a model of goal-directed behavior.
Okay, what does that mean?
We no longer define the granular steps. We simply give the autonomous system a high-level goal, maximize engagement on this platform, or win this game of chess, or design a lethal molecule, and we rely on the machine's internal logic to figure out the optimal pathway to achieve it.
Wow.
The human is increasingly removed from the loop of execution.
And that leads to the most esoteric, terrifying concept in this entire deep dive, the concept of the black box.
Yes.
The text explains that modern AI neural networks, specifically these massive large language models, are fundamentally unexplainable.
It is a crisis of interpretability.
Let's explain why that is, mechanically, because I think people struggle with this. These models are not traditional code. They're built on billions or even trillions of parameters, mathematical weights and biases modeled loosely on the synapses of a human brain.
Right.
We feed them mountains of data, and they adjust these billions of microscopic dials until they can predict the next word in a sentence or generate a photorealistic image.
And we understand the basic math to a single artificial neuron works.
Sure.
But when you stack billions of them together, they develop emergent capabilities at scale. The macro logic becomes obscured by the sheer density of the micromath.
Right. The network creates its own internal map of relationships, what engineers call a latent space. And the engineers who built the system cannot look under the hood and trace the exact pathway of a specific output.
No, they can't.
If an AI denies you a loan or identifies a target for a drone strike, no human being on Earth can print out the code and point to the exact line of logic that explains why.
It is an opaque, unmapped web of minute statistical signals.
I have to push back on our whole framing here.
Go for it.
If we have built a system that operates at the very edge of what we can mathematically comprehend, and we literally cannot explain its thoughts, haven't we stopped building tools? Haven't we essentially summoned an alien intelligence?
That is precisely the paradox we are trapped in. We possess the remarkable engineering ability to create these massive neural networks, and we possess the commercial ability to deploy them into society.
But we don't understand them.
Exactly. We have lost the epistemic ability to fully comprehend them. We are handing the levers of our civilization over to autonomous entities whose internal logic is fundamentally a black box.
It's madness.
We are no longer the masters orchestrating the outcome. We are the instigators who have set a self-directing alien force into motion.
So what does this all mean? When you drop an inexplicable, hyper-evolving, omni-use autonomous intelligence into the middle of human society, what happens to the social order?
Things break down.
The sources talk about the fracturing of what they call the grand bargain.
The grand bargain is essentially the Hobbesian social contract.
Okay, explain that for us.
It is the foundational premise of the modern nation-state. You, the citizen, agree to give up certain absolute freedoms, you pay your taxes, and you submit to the rule of law.
Right, the basics of society.
In exchange, the state possesses a monopoly on the use of physical force, preserves the social order, and provides a baseline of security and public services.
The core implicit promise is that the state will manage the impacts of new technologies to protect you.
Yes.
But the state can't manage this wave. The text describes the coming technologies as a fragility amplifier.
I like that term. They don't just create new problems. They aggressively exploit and widen the existing structural weaknesses of modern societies.
Right.
Look at cybersecurity. We already have hackers exploiting infrastructure. But with autonomous AI, you can launch sophisticated adaptive cyber attacks that scale infinitely without human labor.
Or look at epistemic trust our shared understanding of reality.
Yeah.
We already have political polarization, but now introduce deepfakes. When anyone can generate hyper-realistic audio and video of a politician saying something they never said, the threat isn't just that people believe the fake video.
What's the deeper threat?
The deeper threat is the liar's dividend. When everything can be faked, people stop believing in objective truth altogether.
Oh, because you can just deny everything.
Exactly. If you can't agree on basic reality, democratic debate collapses.
And we haven't even touched on the economic fragility. The book discusses the Turing trap, the mechanism where AI doesn't just assist human labor, it entirely replicates and replaces it. We are staring down massive job automation that could leave massive segments of the global population economically redundant.
And as these fragilities amplify, the wave alters the fundamental structure of power in a bizarre contradiction.
How so?
The text argues that the coming wave is simultaneously violently centralizing and violently decentralizing.
Let's break that contradiction down. On the centralization side, the state sees the chaos of the wave, and its instinct is to grasp for absolute control.
Survival instinct.
Right. The text outlines the very real structural threat of an AI-tocracy. Imagine a high-tech panopticon.
The ultimate surveillance state.
Exactly. You utilize AI to monitor billions of ambient data points in real time. Facial recognition cameras on every corner, tracking your smartphone geolocation, analyzing your purchasing habits, reading your private messages, tracking your biometric heart rate.
It's all connected.
The state uses massive AI models not just to surveil, but to accurately predict and subtly coerce citizen behavior. It's a centralization of absolute, granular, algorithmic control over the human population.
And again, we are looking at the structural mechanisms described in the book impartially, but the blueprint for this kind of authoritarian technology is already being developed and exported globally.
But simultaneously, the exact same wave is radically decentralizing power away from the state. The text describes the rise of neo-feudalism.
Yeah.
What does that look like mechanically?
Well, it looks like a massive tech corporation commanding the wealth, data, and infrastructural reach of a traditional empire, basically dictating terms to elected governments.
Wow.
Or, on a darker level, it looks like splintered enclaves. Imagine a well-funded terrorist organization or a radical biohacker community that suddenly gains the technological capacity to synthesize biological weapons or launch crippling AI cyber campaigns.
Right, because of the asymmetry we talked about.
Exactly. They have the destructive power of a sovereign nation, but none of the territory or accountability. They could alter their own DNA, declare independence, and effectively secede from normal society.
I really want you, if you're listening to this right now, to pause and think about the reality of that. How do you live your life? How do you navigate a society where a local tech startup down the street or a radicalized individual in a basement wields the destructive capacity of a traditional military superpower?
You can't. The traditional social fabric tears apart.
So the state is caught in a vice. On one hand, the democratized asymmetrical power of the wave is stripping away the state's monopoly on force.
Yeah.
On the other hand, the state is heavily tempted to use the centralized power of the wave to lock down society in an authoritarian grip just to survive.
And the tragic synthesis of these contradictory forces is the hollowing out of traditional liberal democracies.
The book calls them zombie governments,
Yes.
right?
Zombie governments. These are institutions that continue to perform the aesthetic theater of politics. They hold elections, politicians debate on television, they pass minor laws.
But they don't actually do anything.
Right, they lack any actual mechanical power to protect their citizens or shape the future. The real power has migrated into the opaque black box algorithms and the neo-feudal entities that control the server farms.
So we are facing splintered, decentralized chaos on one side and the crushing panopticon of total surveillance on the other. Humanity is caught in a structural trap.
It's a very bleak picture.
How do we navigate a path forward when the mechanisms of our society are buckling? This brings us to what the author terms the ultimate dilemma.
The dilemma is a horrifying, mathematically cold trade-off. If we prioritize our current values of unchecked openness, open source research, and free markets, we allow these hyper-evolving omni-use technologies to proliferate freely.
Which sounds good on paper.
It does. But the math dictates that eventually, with billions of actors gaining access to asymmetrical power, someone, somewhere makes a fatal mistake or a malicious choice.
Right.
Openness leads inevitably to catastrophe. An engineered global pandemic, an accidental release of a self-replicating rogue AI, or an automated nuclear escalation.
But the other side of the dilemma is equally grim. If we realize the threat of catastrophe and try to apply hard top-down control to prevent it, what does that actually require?
It requires the AI-tocracy we just discussed.
Right. The only mechanism powerful enough to monitor every single individual, every DNA printer, every line of code being compiled everywhere on Earth is an omnipotent mega machine surveillance state.
To prevent the catastrophe, you must build the dystopia.
You have to sacrifice every ounce of human liberty and privacy to ensure biological and digital security. Catastrophe on the left, dystopia on the right.
And before anyone asks the obvious question, the text explicitly shuts down the idea of a technological timeout.
A moratorium.
Right. A global moratorium on AI and synthetic biology development is mechanically and physically impossible.
Why? If we see the trap, why can't we just, all agree to hit the brakes?
Because our current civilization is functionally addicted to technological yield.
Explain that.
We have 8 billion people on the planet. Our global supply chains, our agricultural output, our medical systems, and our debt-based economic models all require constant, relentless technological growth just to prevent systemic collapse.
And we physically can't stop.
We literally need these breakthroughs. We need advanced AI to model climate change solutions. We need synthetic biology to engineer drought-resistant crops to feed the population and to cure complex diseases.
Right.
If we hit the brakes, the complex machinery of modern civilization starves and stalls.
We are on a bicycle. If we stop pedaling, we fall over.
Exactly.
So we cannot stop. We cannot embrace total openness, and we cannot embrace total authoritarian control. Therefore, the authors argue, the only viable way out of the dilemma is a strategy called containment.
Containment is not a single magic bullet. It is a highly complex, nested set of constraints and structural changes operating at every level of society, from the individual engineer up to global treaties.
The book outlines 10 steps for containment, and I want us to debate a few of the core mechanical ones because they are highly ambitious. The first one is maker responsibility. The idea that the engineers and executives building the tech are legally and morally accountable for its downstream impacts.
It's shifting away from the Facebook-era ethos of Move fast and break things. You cannot move fast and break things when the thing you might break is the global biological ecosystem.
Another massive step they propose is shifting corporate incentives from pure profit to profit plus purpose. But I have to challenge this.
Okay, challenge away.
In a hyper-competitive capitalist framework where billions of dollars are on the line, isn't profit plus purpose just corporate greenwashing?
A lot of people would say yes.
Right. Will a board of directors really prioritize vague purpose over quarterly earnings when the tech is this lucrative?
That is the cynical view, and it's highly valid, but the text acknowledges that lip service isn't enough.
So what's the actual mechanism?
The containment mechanism here requires structural legal changes to how corporations are charted. It requires moving toward public benefit corporation structures, where a company is legally mandated and shielded from shareholder lawsuits to prioritize safety and societal benefit alongside profit. It has to be hard-coded into the corporate charter, not just the PR strategy.
Let's talk about the physical containment steps. The text advocates for creating physical choke points.
Yes.
Even if software is infinitely replicable, the hardware to run massive AI models is physical and scarce.
Yes, the specialized compute.
Right. You need tens of thousands of highly specialized microchips. And those chips are only made by a few foundries in the world, which rely on insanely complex, extreme ultraviolet lithography machines.
The EUV machines.
Built by basically one company in the Netherlands, ASML. The strategy is to heavily regulate and monitor those physical hardware choke points to track who is building the massive, dangerous models.
Right.
But again, are global supply chains really that controllable? We see smuggling and black markets evade sanctions all the time.
They are porous, yes. But an ASML EUV lithography machine is the size of a bus. It costs hundreds of millions of dollars and requires a fleet of specialized engineers just to keep it calibrated. You cannot smuggle it in a briefcase.
Good point.
The text argues that, while choke points aren't perfect, they introduce necessary friction. They slow the hyper-evolution down just enough for society to adapt.
And crucially, the authors argue for a massive cultural shift within the tech world itself, building a self-critical culture.
Which doesn't really exist right now.
No. Right now, the financial incentives encourage companies to hide their failures, to cover up when an AI acts strangely, to protect their stock price.
Exactly.
Containment requires a culture like the aviation industry where every crash is meticulously investigated and the data is shared globally to ensure the entire system gets safer.
This raises an important question, though, the overarching irony of containment.
What is it?
To build the sophisticated monitoring systems necessary to track biological threats, to audit complex algorithms, to detect deepfakes, and to manage the choke points. What do we need?
We need massive, complex, on-the-use AI. We have to use the very technologies that threaten us to build the seawalls that will protect us from the wave.
Exactly. We are fighting fire with a more precise application of fire. It requires constructing what the author calls the narrow path.
Threading the needle.
We must thread the needle, balancing just enough technological progression and defensive capability to survive without tipping into the abyss of catastrophe on one side or the oppressive dystopia of the mega machine on the other.
It's an act of geopolitical tightrope walking that requires an unprecedented level of human coordination, wisdom, and, honestly, luck.
A lot of luck.
So let's bring this all together. We have gone on an incredible, deeply unsettling journey today. We started by looking at our deep, almost biological drive to invent the legacy of the campfire and the combustion engine.
Driven by the psychological ego of finding something technically sweet.
Right. We explored our willful blindness, our evolutionary pessimism aversion that allows us to eat pizza while calmly discussing the biological apocalypse.
We dove into the mechanics of the metaphysical shift, how editing DNA-based pairs and training unexplainable neural networks means we are literally engineering the foundational source code of intelligence and synthetic life.
And we faced the precarious social dilemma, the fracturing of the grand bargain, the threat of centralized AI-autocracies and decentralized neo-feudal hackers, leaving our zombie governments totally hollowed out.
And finally, the desperate, necessary attempt to walk the narrow path of containment.
It is a sobering synthesis. We are witnessing the ultimate inflection point. We are transitioning from a historical era where humanity shaped its tools into a radically new epoch, where our autonomous, unexplainable tools will shape us.
Perhaps at a speed beyond our biological capacity to adapt.
And I want to leave you, the listener, with a final mind-expanding concept drawn directly from the implications of this text to mull over.
Think about this one.
We are entering an epoch where human beings will no longer be the primary drivers of planetary events. Think about the mechanics of your daily life.
Your day-to-day.
In the very near future, as AI becomes integrated into every facet of society, you will likely spend more of your waking hours interacting with artificial intelligences, your digital assistants, your algorithmic managers, the synthetic entities that write your news and generate your entertainment, than you will with actual human beings.
Wow.
If our primary companions, our creators of art, our teachers, and our problem solvers are non-human, alien intelligences, what will it actually mean to be a human being?
Will consciousness still be our defining trait or just an outdated biological artifact?
A profound, deeply unsettling question, and one that every single one of us must actively engage with before the choice is made for us.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us on this custom-tailored deep dive into the source material. We encourage you to really ponder these questions as you look at the devices surrounding you right now.
They're changing everything.
Because, we used to think of technology like a hammer clean, predictable, completely subordinate to our will. But as we've explored today, the hammer is now thinking for itself.
We are swimming in incredibly murky waters.
Summoning autonomous forces we barely comprehend, hoping we can build the ship while we are already lost at sea. Stay curious, keep questioning the mechanics of the world around you, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.